The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. This is fifth meeting this year of the SPA. Gosh, the year is really flying away. I'm really excited that Nader Talai has decided to come back as former chairman of this august body to tell us about scaling Agile. Just before he starts to do that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. We've got meetings lined up for June and July. The June one is by Daniel Ahern of Adjust Services. He recently ran a workshop at the DHSC about neurodiversity and mental well-being in the new normal. And he's offered to do something very similar for us on the 2nd of June. So it's quite a different sort of topic, and I hope it interests lots of people. Then, of course, there is going to be the annual SPA conference. We cancelled it last year due to the pandemic, but we're holding it online in the middle of July. The URL, as you probably heard, is spaconference.org, and the call for proposals, session proposals, is open at the moment. It's just been extended now to the 17th of May, and the sooner you can get a proposal in, the more likely it will be to receive positive feedback and to help you make it a stronger proposal. And anyone whose proposal is accepted gets to attend the conference for free. I wish I could tell you that we're going out to the pub at the end of the meeting. Unfortunately, I cannot, but I hope you enjoy the meeting all the same. So I'm going to get out of the way now and allow Nader to take over.
Thanks, Imo, and welcome to all of you. So what is this picture over here? So this is a little bit of a personal story. In 1988 between 1988 and 1992, I worked for a company called Contron Instruments. I joined them, and this is not the actual product because I couldn't find a photo of it online. But they had an existing product, and they wanted to build a color monitor, which we called ColorMon. It was called ColorMon. We were a small team, so the monitor, if you like, has got a host, which is, the best I can describe it, is a real-time kernel. It's not a real-time operating system. It's a kernel that it's running forever. It's like a do forever loop, and what it expects is that the different modules which run as tasks, they need to call an interrupt, if you like, or force an interrupt within 20 milliseconds, maximum of 20 milliseconds, so that we can get multitasking, if you like, we can get all the modules going. You can see an example here. For example, you can see a module would be an ECG module. It could be a pulse oximetry, as you can see here, or non-invasive blood pressure, an IBP module, or others. So the monitor will have something up to 8 slots for the modules to be plugged in, and the configuration would be based on what the patient needs are. So the host was only a couple of people working on it. There was a team of 2. I worked on some parts of the host, actually, when the we call it the pad, the picture. So it wasn't windowing system, but as a module, you can ask for an area of a screen. So we give you that area of the screen, and other modules can, as you can see in here, like the ECG has taken a section of the screen, that top half, and then the NIBP, so the non-invasive blood pressure, a little bit at the bottom. But I'm not here to impress you about my coding, if you like, experience, because you all will be a lot better than what I did. This is back in, as you can see, 1992, and it was using programming language called PLM, which is an Intel language. But the purpose of this, the reason I put this in here, is to show that, you know, each module was effectively one-person team. Some modules had 2 people working on it, but typically it was one-person thing. And for the host, which was the most complicated bit, if you like, we had 2 people working on it. And we had 1 team leader who was designing how things will interact with each other. That worked very well, and we had our hardware colleagues, just because this was real-time embedded, if you like, application. So we have our hardware colleagues just working on the same floor with us. And then we have our test specialists who would test the code to destruction, or actually the monitor to destruction, because it just needed to work forever. Once the testing was done and they were comfortable with it, then they will soak test it and different temperatures and all that stuff, and it had to run. We used to run it for 2 weeks non-stop. So why am I saying this again? Is because, you know, when we work at small scale, 1 team or individuals that we can interact with each other, there is no need to worry about scaling and alignment, because we were all aligned. We all knew what the purpose was. We were all working on this color monitor. So the task was visible to all of us. We all knew what we needed to do. And if you were working on a module, you plug it into the system. If it wasn't working, you got the feedback and you got on with it. As you grow and it gets bigger, then there is an issue with alignment and everybody knowing what is it we are doing. So most of the organizations that I see and I work with, we have lots and lots of agile teams. The teams are doing their best and they're doing a very good job. But it's difficult to see how that aligns with the organization strategy and the mission. So the purpose of this talk is to say, okay, how, when we have that sort of structure, if you like, when we have many, many teams, how do we get that alignment with the purpose, the organization strategy, and how do we organize ourselves as teams of agile teams that we are aligned and we minimize the handoffs and delays. So this is I guess the title of the talk, Thriving in the Digital Age. So what we're going to do is quickly speak about why do we need agility. Most of us know this. Where should we start and how do we start? How do we align on what matters for the organization? So we'll talk about the vertical alignment, in other words, aligning between the strategy and all the work items, how do they align? And then aligning as teams of teams, horizontal alignment, if you like, how do we align ourselves so that we minimize the handoffs and delays and we all know what the mission is and working together. We also look at how we're going to lead for adaptability, the need for us to be adaptable and understand that we're navigating uncertainty. And then we can spend as little as long as you wish exploring the Scaled Agile Framework website and going through that. Then we talk about next steps. So why do we need agility? Well, one of the things that we can see, there's a trend that most organizations, the companies are disappearing. The life expectancy is getting shorter. So what you can see in here is that companies are lasting less than 20 years. Now, Kontron Instrument that I worked with during up until 1992, they actually dissolved in 2007. Of course, they're only a small company, well, smallish company. But the trend is the same. You know, organizations need to be able to adapt to market needs quickly. You may have a very, very successful product, and Colomon was very successful. A lot of hospitals in UK, in States, and Far East were using the monitors, but that's not good enough. You know, you need to then say, okay, what are the market needs? How is the market changing? How do we need to adapt to that? So that's what we need to do. So what we have in here is, over the years, we've gone through different eras, or if you like, revolutions. And each revolution results in new ways of working, and organizations and companies that put those new ways of working into production, they benefit and thrive. And those who still stick with the old ways of working, they struggle and they will perish away. So right now, I mean, whatever whether we call it Industry 4 or whatever you want to call it, the era that we are in is, we call it digitization, but really is the age of software, because it's all about software. Whether you are a hardware organization or pure software organization, the differentiator and your ability and agility is based on your ability to be able to create large-scale software with high quality without overburdening the people that work with you in order to generate this software. So what we need to do is understand what are these new ways of working that allows companies to thrive in the age of software. Now, we know there are some digitally native organizations that have survived and thrived right now. So Apples of this world, Microsoft, Netflix, Amazon, there's a handful of organizations that are doing that. But as a society, it's not good for us to have just a handful of organizations that are thriving and they have a lot of money and political power. So we need to make sure that most organizations can also do this. So this is what we need to do. So in order to be able to thrive, we need to be able to respond to market and operational needs quickly. We need to be able to adapt our software products to meet the customer needs as quickly as we can. Again, without overburdening our staff or cutting corners. Quality is important. We cannot scale without built-in quality. So the challenges that the companies face is, most organizations are facing, is slow time to market, low employee engagement, low customer satisfactions, and poor quality. It is not that the organizations and the leaders in these organizations do not understand this challenge. They all understand the challenge. One of the problems that we face is that the leadership and most people in the organization are thinking that belong to the previous revolution. In other words, we're thinking about mass production ways of managing to software development. What does that mean? That means that we are thinking that software development could be deterministic. We could know in advance how long it's going to take. We want that certainty. We want to see that project plan that shows us, oh yes, you're going to have this on the market in 3 months' time or whatever it is at this time and on this day. So as leaders, we need to start to think and behave differently. We need to be comfortable with navigating uncertainty. We need to be comfortable with saying we got hypotheses and we're going to test and learn quickly. And as software developers and teams of specialists that are delivering the software and enabling the organization to meet its challenges and prove their hypotheses, we also need to learn that, well, you're going to see it when you see it. I cannot tell you how long is a piece of string is not really the right answer when somebody wants to know when things are going to happen, because organizations also need to, as businesses, need to plan, and they cannot plan on a week or 2 weekly basis and just say, well, we don't know what we're going to do in a quarter. So those are the kind of things that we need to get comfortable with. So one of the things that organizations have, all organizations have grown from being a small network to being bigger organizations, and now we've got hierarchies. And the hierarchies have given us that stability and efficiency, but they get in the way of us being able to react to customer needs quickly. So what do we need to do? We need to have our network. We need to have that ability to have smallish teams that are aligned with the customer need, can react quickly to that market and customer needs, deliver the solutions that the customers want, and delight them. So do we get rid of the hierarchy and put a network in place? No, we can keep both the hierarchy and have the network. So we will see how we can organize ourselves. So this is our horizontal alignment, if you like. How do we get teams of agile teams that are aligned and are working on the same solution? So this is, if you like, the new ways of working that we need to do is to embrace uncertainty. And this is about moving from we can know everything up front to saying, well, actually it's unknowable, but what we need to have is hypotheses. and we can do test and learns and learn quickly. The way we measure success in this world is that the ability for us to learn quickly. How many times can we learn? If you like, the time to feedback, reducing the time to feedback and increasing the number of feedback loops. That's what we want to do. And that's the way that we want to move, rather than having certainty where we have a plan which says you will get this feature on this date and this time, which is, although it's comfortable, is not realistic. So this is a quote from Mike Rother, which I quite like. So in order to make these changes happen, these new ways of working, it is the leadership job, because the system of work and the ways of working is something that the leaders are responsible for. They cannot delegate that responsibility, and we cannot expect the teams to just change the organization's ways of working. And this quote from Mike Rother is quite powerful, I think, which is that what patterns of thought and action are you practicing and reinforcing every day in your organization? Because as leaders, we need to make sure that our actions, behaviors, and words are aligned with new ways of working. And if they are misaligned, then we are sending the wrong signal. Most of us will follow the people who influence us. The influence could be through a hierarchy. The influence could be that we see them as somebody who is a champion of ours, a mentor of ours. You know, he or she knows how to deliver software the best way, so I would copy what they do. Or they know where the best coffee is, so I will follow them to the coffee shop. And as leaders, we need to make sure that our behaviors are also aligned with these new ways of working, and we are comfortable with navigating the uncertainty and lead you aligned with the lean agile principles. Okay. So we know that we need to change, but how? Where do we start? We're a big organization trying to change the whole thing in one go. That doesn't work. How do we start? Where do we start? So what we want to do is to say, okay, what is the problem we want to solve? Where is the problem? What is the problem we want to solve? Because it's no good doing change for the sake of it. There must be a need for that change. What do we want to change? And then where should we start? Where is an area that we can start? And then defining what are the measures which tell us. So we know what the problem is. What is our goal? What do we want to achieve? What are the measures which will inform us about how we are going towards achieving that goal? We then need to define and experiment, if you like, carry out the experiment, and then from the experiment we can learn and evolve. So we're showing here, or at least I'm showing this as a linear flow, but realistically it's not going to be a linear flow, because even when we define the goals and the success measures and we do our experiments, we might realize that actually the goal needs to be adjusted, and we might have to adjust the success measures. But as we take steps, we learn and we navigate, and it will never be a straight line. It's not like we go from A to B in a straight line. There will be steps forward, and we will be taking steps backwards, because we realize, you know, that's the whole thing about is not knowable in advance. That's the whole thing about navigating uncertainty. If we knew that this is the path, you're going to go from, you know, even a meandering path like the one that you can see here, even if we knew that this is the path and it just goes like this, then it would be knowable. But it is not like that. We will take a step, we realize we need to go back a few, and then we'll sort it out. So that's what we're going to do. So these just build it. So I'm just going to skip the builds, so that's fine. And the reason that we say, you know, think big, act small, learn fast, if you like, is what we're doing in here. And of course, you need to train people, because if you're changing your ways of working, then it's unfair to expect people to behave in new ways without you showing them what those things are, those new ways are. So we're going to touch on the alignment here now. So how do we align on what matters? Okay. When we try and transform, and we see the transformation as number of teams trying to do things their own way, then we get these lots of teams doing stuff, but nobody is aligned with a purpose. So what we want to do is, first of all, get our alignment with the organization purpose. So all organizations have got a strategy. How they form that, that's fine, they form it. We need a way of referring to that strategy, whether they are objectives or key results or strategic themes, a way that is shorthand but is specific enough that we know what the strategy is. And then we need to define work items. Now in SAFE, we call them epics, that will implement, if you like, the organization strategy or the objectives of that organization strategy. These are all hypotheses. The epics are hypothesis statements, and then we define the epic alone is not enough. We need to find the minimum viable product. What is the minimum thing we can do in order to invalidate the hypotheses that we have? And then we build the features for that, we test it, and you can see the hierarchies. Basically, epics break down into features and break down into stories, and the teams work on stories. The features flow through teams of agile teams, which are the agile release training SAFE terms. But the whole idea here is that we are making it explicit that this is a hypothesis. We believe that if we do this, these good things could happen. We know we are on the right track when we see these leading indicators, but we won't know for sure. So it's not like, if I do this, if we build this feature, you put it out there, we're going to get 10,000 customers in a month. It's not like that. So we just have a hypothesis, and we need to test that hypothesis. And the whole idea for this is that what we want to do is to be able to test that hypothesis in as short a time as possible and with as a minimum investment as possible. So that was, if you like, that's the vertical alignment. So we get from strategy all the way down to the team, so everybody knows that how we're working and how that aligns with the strategy. How about giving our horizontal alignment as teams of teams? So we need to make sure that we are all aligned. Everybody in this teams of agile teams, we're all aligned to meet a customer need. So the solutions that we're delivering are to meet a customer need. So again, we can see the line of sight. That the epic aligns with the organization strategy. We've got these features that the epic is broken down into, and then we've got stories that we need to work on. The teams need to break the features down into stories, and then as teams we work on stories, and then we deliver the solution. We are all aligned together, we plan together as teams of teams. We know, we decide what can be achieved. Yes, the organization has got a goal and there's a set of features they would like to get done, but the teams decide what can be done and how much can be done. And they set their own objectives, and then they measure themselves whether we achieve the objectives, and we learn from that. Leading for adaptability. So one of the challenges that leaders face is that we have got too much demand for our attention, but we don't know where the attention is needed most. The reason for that is that we have limited or no understanding of the organization capability. So we don't know how many things we can do, how many epics we can do, how many initiatives we can have in the organization. We also have, there is a lack of visibility. We don't see where the work is. We cannot see where the work is. Yes, we have reports which tell us everything is green, but that's not quite the same as having visibility. There's some lack of clarity on the roles and responsibilities as well. And all of these things will cause the slow time to market, poor quality, and low engagement that we've seen earlier. So what do we need? We need we need a system, if you like. We need new ways of working that allow us to have improved flow. We need to have measurement so that we know what our capabilities are, current capabilities are as an organization, as a team, as a department. We need to also know how we can prioritize and problem solve. So prioritization, built-in quality obviously is the key, but also prioritization. One of the problems we have is that the teams or departments within the organization have got different priorities, and when we want work from another team or another department, because of the conflicting priorities, we have to wait. So we need to have a way of prioritizing. Problem solving is key, because what happens when we hit a problem right now, we say, oh, we are blocked, or we put a label on it, or we send an email, and then we move on to the next task. But really, we need to learn how to problem solve rather than just leave them for somebody else. We need to understand, how do we find out the root causes of the problems, how do we address the root causes and remove them. And we also need a way of decision making, and of course leadership is the key foundational. Everything starts and ends with leadership. So we need leadership, and leadership is at all levels. It doesn't mean the CEO is the only leader. Leadership, we need it at all levels, not just, you know, the executive team. So how does SAFE enable these abilities for us to measure flow, have measurements, prioritizing, problem solving, decision making, and leadership? Is that we provide managing the flow. Yes, we visualize, obviously we visualize the work and the workflow states. We also reduce the batch size, smaller items. We try and work on as small an item as possible. We'll limit the number of work in progress, because we know when we reduce the number of work in progress, it does a couple of things. A, it increases the focus on what matters. B, work flows quicker. Prioritization, we take the economic view and we use a technique called weighted shortest job first to make sure that all the features are prioritized that way relative to each other. It's not an absolute measure, but it's a relative measure. So we can say, given a number of features that we are working on or we're interested in right now, what is the right sequence? What is the optimal sequence to get the best value out of it? And that's what we need to do. And of course, our decision making is all about, we need to make trade-offs. It's not a single, we cannot make decisions on a single parameter. Usually we need to consider a number of parameters, and then we need to make trade-offs. And also we need to tackle the sources of delay and get the root causes of delays out of the way. Measurements, we look at, so the teams measure and the teams of teams see how predictable they are. So they set their objectives and they see how well they're achieving those objectives. We also have some flow measures, which is time to market, the throughput, how many items are we delivering in a given period of time, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever that is. How long does it take to get a work item over the line? And of course, the quality, which is very, very important. And then my screen is blocked. And whatever the next one is going to be about problem solving, and leadership is there leading by example and leading the transformation. So again, as leaders, we need to be able to lead by example. It's no good expecting people to do not what you do. So your leadership by example is important, and problem solving is the one that I couldn't see, but we got problem solving as well. I'm going through these, but I don't see, I mean, if people have got questions, I guess we can ask them at the end, or you can ask them as we are. I don't have a problem either way. So what is Scaled Agile Framework? So let me just jump to the website here. So you can, this is a website that is open to anyone. You can all go there, you can have a look at it. everybody can see my screen? Yes, I think you can. There are different configurations of SAFE. The configurations are there to help you and your organization to select what is best suited to your context. Okay. Now, before I go into a lot of the details here, one of the things that I need to mention, and I should have mentioned it earlier, is if you don't need to scale, you don't scale. So the first rule of scaling is you don't scale. If the product that you're building can be built with 2, 3, 5, 10 people, then that's perfect. You know, you don't need to scale it. But if you work in a situation where you need a number of teams to work together to deliver the solution, then you need to find a way of organizing yourselves and also have the cadence and the events that allow you to get that coordination and alignment going. So in SAFE, we have different configurations that are based on what the context of your organization and what the needs are. Essential SAFE, as the name suggests, is the, if you like, the minimum building block. And again, the core part of SAFE is the agile teams. Without agile teams, we don't have anything. So the core building block is to have agile teams. And agile teams, you're all familiar with it. So we got the roles of product owner, scrum master, and the agile team. So the agile team are the technical specialists. They actually know how to do the work. So we got scrum master, who is the facilitator. We got the product owner, who is sort of optimizing the flow of value in the team. And we got the agile teams who know exactly how to do the work. So they are the ones who decide how much work can be done. They are the ones who set up agree on what the iteration goal should be. And of course, they are the ones who guide the product owner as well. The product owner understands the business context, and the agile teams can guide the product owner in the technical side of things. And when it comes to writing the acceptance criteria, is a joint effort. It's all collaboration. And then we get the stories and the acceptance criteria that flows. Before I go too much further, I want to get a bit of feedback from the people on the call, because I'm not sure whether what we're covering is what people want to hear, or is it something else that they want to hear. So it would be good if you were in the chat or audio or something, some sort of feedback.
I've given everyone the opportunity to unmute themselves. Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, what I like to do is get data about how good is this SAFE, for example, compared to other agile methods in terms of productivity or costs or success in projects, for example. Do we have any data on that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. I think that was John. Yes, thank you for that. So yes, so people use SAFE not because it's the #1, if you like, or the most popular scaling framework out there, but they use it because of the business results that they achieve. And the business results are reported, sorry, I'm trying to find it and I think I'm in the wrong place. And the business results are reported by the client themselves, not by Scaled Agile. So what I'm saying is that these are the business results that organizations have reported. So what they're saying is that they can achieve productivity, better quality, better customer engagement. And if you want to read any of the customer stories, you can go to the customer stories tabs, and you can probably find any domain that you're interested in. You will see at least one customer story. There are many organizations that are using SAFE that don't necessarily submit a customer story, because that's their choice whether they want to share their story or not. But you can see some of them are in video, and you have a lot also the older ones which are not in video. All right, does that answer your question?
Can I do a follow-up?
Yes,
Only
please.
partly, because I'm not. I am interested in realistic stories and case studies, but my question was, is there any measure of how much more successful they are in their IT projects, or how much more productive they are? And that would require some numbers, not stories, and it would maybe even require some academic studies with a whole lot of cases and their productivity and their failure rate. Yeah.
Yeah. So all I can tell you is what. Okay, so let me just go back in there because I think we had it. It's my own fault. I went over it too fast. So you can see these are what people have reported. Okay, so as the result of the customer studies, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit better. So
there we go. That's more like
time to market. Can you see that?
Yeah, thank you.
Time to
now
market.
That's more what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, quality, productivity, and engagement. So these are extracted from the customer studies or customer stories. Now, has anybody done a research, or have we done, you can do it with SAFE and you can do it with somebody else, the same project or the same initiative, and measure the outcome to see whether there is a difference? I am not aware of one. All right.
Okay.
I don't think
this is just a good start. I'll say thank you for the question and let other people ask you questions if they like. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else wants? If I go through Scaled Agile Framework, big picture, is that something of interest to you? Or is there something else you want to ask?
Well, from my point of view, I'd be quite interested in exploring the site a little more to see what we can learn from it.
Okay. So let's explore the site a bit more. So as I said earlier, so there are different configurations to meet the context of the organization that you're in. So essential is as the name suggests, this is the minimum set that you need to have. In order to do SAFE, you need to have these. So you need to have agile teams, which is your core building block. Then you need to have teams of agile teams. So that's 5 to 12 teams, somewhere between 50 to 125 people working together to deliver a solution. And solution in SAFE is a generic term. So it could be a product, it could be a service, it could be an IT system. So that's what we call a solution. So everybody is aligned in delivering that. And the way we make that alignment happen is in two ways. One is that we have a backlog of features that the team, so the agile release training, in other words, teams of teams, use to deliver that solution, and they have input into that. And periodically, so somewhere either 8, 10, or 12 weeks, let's say 10 weekly, we get together, all of us together, and we do a plan of what we think we can achieve over the next 10 weeks. Now, it is the teams that do the planning, and it's the team that then creates PI objectives. So PI objective, if you are familiar with sprint goals, and if you're not familiar with sprint goals, I'll try and explain it. So PI objectives are the outcomes that you're going to achieve. It's not a list of stories. It's so what? If I do these stories, what will you see from a business as a business? And that's what we're doing. So we capture the results of our planning as a set of PI objectives, and the teams write the PI objectives. The teams decide what can be done, how much we can achieve. Now, 10 weeks, yes. Is it going to be exactly what we said? No. Does the iteration planning go away? No. So we do our broad brush planning for the 10 weeks, and every iteration, and iterations in SAFE by default are 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we also do an iteration plan to say, how are we moving towards achieving that goal? Okay. And things may have changed, so we will adapt, we will adjust, and we move forward. So how do we make sure that the plans stay stable for 10 weeks? We don't make the plans be stable, but what we do is make sure that we provide enough capacity margin. In other words, we are not going to plan to 100% capacity. Maybe we only plan to 60% capacity, because we know, A, we've just looked at these features and we've broken down, and we've spent 2 days sort of looking at them, breaking them down into stories. So these are the big building blocks, and we think this will fit in the 10 weeks. So based on those, we then commit to our PI objectives. Things may change, that's fine. Business priorities may change. So they will, we might get to a situation where, I don't know, 4 weeks, 6 weeks in, business priority will change, and that's okay. We can react to that change. But what that means is that something needs to give for that work to go in. It's not like, let's add that on top of what's going on already. So that's the, if you like, the PI planning. That's what we do in there, and the teams do the planning, and the teams write the PI objectives, which is the outcome that we hope to achieve at the end of that 8 or 10 or 12 weeks period. We still do all the usual iterations. So if you're familiar with Scrum, you call it sprint planning. So iteration planning is the same as sprint planning, if you like. So the teams need to decide how much work can be done. So you still have your iteration planning, you do your iteration review, which is your team increment. In other words, working software every 2 weeks. How's it going? You do your iteration retrospective. How can we do things better? So all of those things are there. Now, on top of that, we also have what we call a system demo. So every 2 weeks, the work of all the teams within the Agile release train is integrated, deployed to a staging environment, which is close to a live environment. And we show working software. And the purpose of that, obviously, A, is to get feedback. B, is to make sure that everything is integrated. We're not waiting for the, I don't know, week 6, 4, 5 to put things together. No, it's totally integrated, and we show it. And then as soon as it's validated on that staging, we actually got continuous deployment. We will deploy the code onto production system. It will not be visible to the client, but it will be deployed to the production system. Of course, you need to have architected your code to allow that to happen. And there are different ways, and some of the people on this call are better, know those better than I do. But those are the things that we can do. Simple ones are feature toggles, but there are better ways of doing that. So that's how we get, if you like, our code from iterations. Every iteration, every team is working, but we got our continuous integration, which is integrating the work of every individual within the team and the teams of teams. And the idea of that is that we have, as the name suggests, continuous integration. So when you're really, really get good at it, this could be as soon as you make a change. So it could be multiple times an hour, it may be multiple times a day, but at the very, very latest point that you need to have everything integrated is at the end of the iteration. But we're doing continuous, and this is what these loops are showing in here. Say that we have continuous exploration, meaning that we are continually sensing what is the market need, what is happening with the market need, what are the unmet or underserved user needs that we need to be addressing. So that's our continuous exploration. Then we are doing continuous integration. So continually we are integrating our work with our other team members and the other teams within the Agile release train, continuously integrating. Then we do continuous deployment. Once the code has been validated on the staging environment, it gets deployed onto the production system, not yet visible to the client, because we will release on demand. So we release when our customers need it, our business needs it. Whenever there is a need, we release on demand. So at the team level, we have the option of using Scrum, Extreme Programming, or Kanban. Regardless of what you do, we use a lot of, we recommend a lot of extreme programming practices which ensure that you can have built-in quality. So built-in quality, and again, because SAFe version 5 is about business agility, some of the XP practices, we've sort of extended them. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Collective code ownership. We just say collective ownership of standards. So if you're in a marketing team or a sales team and you want to apply agile ways of working, you still need to have a collective way of working so everybody knows how it is. Per programming, we now say per working and peer reviews. So, you know, you can apply that wider than just technology side of things. Okay. And of course, we've got TDD and we've got BDD, and we encourage teams to use that. And again, as most of you know, a lot of people say they're doing TDD. They're doing test-driven development. But are they doing it the way it was intended for? Well, it's okay. I mean, of course, you need to write a test first, then write the code, then the test and the code, and then so red, green, and then refactor, improve the design of the code as you go along, and then the actual code, if you like, the architecture of the code will emerge from the tests. That is the preferred way of working, but some people write the tests after the right code. Is it better than the preferred way? No. Is it better than having no tests? Yes. So we don't encourage them to do it that way, but you know, organizations do TDD, as you know. Not quite everybody follows as the rules as we expect them to, but those are all the things that are there, we built in, and they're encouraged. So again, test-driven development, behavior-driven development, these are all technical practices that will ensure that we have good quality. Of course, definition of done, having a definition of done that everybody knows, and then acceptance criteria for each work item or stories, and then continually raising the bar on your definition of done, so that at a team level, when you say it's done, it's ready to go live, as opposed to, well, it's developed, but it cannot go any further. So that's what we do. That's at the team level. So the product owners in SAFe, they are focused on the teams. They are part of the product management team. And in SAFe, we got product management or product manager. A product manager is more externally focused. They are interacting with the customer. They understand what the customer needs are. They actually do market research and understand market segments. You know, what are the needs of this market segment? They are the ones who are responsible for coming up with a product vision and roadmap, and also the features which will fulfill that vision and roadmap. So that's what the product managers do. They define the features and they sequence the features to make sure we get the optimal value out of them. The release train engineer is to the agile release train as the scrum master is to the team. So basically they are the facilitator, their coach, their servant leaders for the agile release train. They are making sure that the agile release train, that's the team of teams, is working as effectively as it can and keeps improving its effectiveness and the flow. System architects provide the architecture guidance to the agile release train. In other words, to the teams of teams. Does that give you an idea of what we're talking about at least at the essential level?
Yeah, thanks for explaining all that. What sort of tooling do we have to use?
Well, the tooling obviously is up to you. There is no recommended tooling. There is no imposed or enforced tooling. So organizations, a lot of organizations, whether we like it or not, use Jira. Now Jira works at the team level and you can make it work at this level. The challenge we have with Jira and then or tools like those, of course, there are plugins now for Jira. is when you go at the portfolio level. So what does the portfolio mean? So if you look at it, what we have, this is at the portfolio level. Now we're looking at what is the organization strategy. We refer to that strategy using strategic themes like objective or key results. These are shorthand but specific ways of relating the organization strategy. And then we need initiatives, which we call epics in SAFE, that will deliver that organization strategy. And again, these are all hypotheses, okay? And then getting this view in Jira is a little bit harder, but there are Jira Align and other tools. So we've got Jira Align, there is Rally, there is version 1. I don't know all of them. There's there is many tools. There are many tools that actually will help you achieve this goal. You know, basically get this electronically, get the view that you want. Because if you look at it, we got a strategic flow here. Our portfolio flow is up here. We got a team or team flow. This is how we coordinate the work between multiple teams. And then we got a team flow, how individual teams work. And these are hierarchical or interconnected Kanban systems. You know, a portfolio, an epic will flow up to a point and it's waiting for an agile release train to be available to pull that into actually delivering or validating or invalidating the hypothesis of the MVP. And when the hypothesis is validated, we invest more. If it's not validated, we stop. So getting these hierarchical Kanban systems and be able to see that visual flow between the portfolio, the agile release train, team of teams, and the team is some tools will need a lot more tweaking than the others. Right, so portfolio view that I've just shown you is exactly that. So we say, what are the strategy of the organization, what are the work items, the epics that will deliver that, and then how we break the epics down to features. If you like, features are the work items that we can speak with the customer about. They understand it, you know, it's big enough for the customer to understand what it is, and the stories are smaller units, as you know. One of the other things that you see on this big picture is enablers. You see them everywhere. So we got enabler epic, enabler feature, enabler stories. So what are these things? Enablers, as the name suggests, are work that we need to do in order for the epics or the features to flow faster. And they are typically infrastructure and or code, but they're not just those. They could be research. They could be, you know, Spike is a kind of enabler. So we need to understand something. That's an enabler. Okay. So in SAFE, the enablers contribute to building what we call the architecture runway, these little zigzag red line that you see here on my screen. So the way that I describe the architecture runway, think of a train and tracks. So traditionally what we would have done, we would have said, we want to go from A to B, let's lay all the track. In other words, we would have done all the architecture up front and we would have said, this is what you want to do. So in SAFE, we only lay enough track for the train to move a bit, and then that gives us the ability to change course, because we may change, you know, we might realize that we need to go a different direction. So that's what we do. We do just in time, just enough, just in time, and that gives us the ability to change. So we don't go and build loads of enablers and then start to do features. We just blend the enablers and the features together. One of the ways we make sure that that's done is capacity allocation. So we ensure that there is capacity allocation that is done across the organization, which says the blend of features to enablers, or epics to enablers, or stories to enablers should be this. Why is that important? Because we get to the situation where a product owner or a product manager is so focused on getting features and stories out that they forget the fact that we actually need that enablers. We need that investment in the architecture. So by putting that capacity allocation, we get that a balance right, and also we get, and that's why we got this pairing, or these, if you like, the three people working together here. The architects and the product managers, they are working, they're collaborating together. Yes, I want to get the features, but you also need to get the architecture right. Okay, and that's what we're doing. This also brings another point in SAFE. We also need to balance. One of the things that we need to balance is the intentional architecture and the emergent architecture. So we do minimal amount of intentional architecture. In other words, how does the solution as a whole fit together, and we let as much of it to emerge from the teams. But we don't need the teams to everybody to reinvent the wheel, you know, come up with a new way and then say, oh, I didn't realize that you wanted to do that as well. So we have some intentional architecture and then a lot of emergent architecture. And that allows us to do that.
Alec McCulloch had a question about the autonomy of teams and the ways of working. Alec, do you want to ask the question?
You're going to ask the question, or is it?
Well, I'm asking him to unmute himself, but it doesn't seem to work out how to do that.
Okay.
The question was, within a release train, there is a team of teams.
Yeah.
Does each team still have the ability to select the way they work, or can they be mixed?
The answer is yes. So the teams can decide how they want to work. So you could have a team that is using Scrum, another that is using XP, another team that is using Kanban. They can do that. The constraint that SAFE imposes is that regardless of how you work, all of us will have that iteration cadence, and we will all be synchronized. It's not just the cadence, we're all synchronized. So what I mean by that is that all iterations, let's say, will start on Monday, and they're 2 weeks long. So whether you're doing Kanban, XP, or Scrum, you will adhere to that constraint. Does that answer your question?
Well, the project I'm currently working with, we have very much that idea, you know, that there's releases are still pretty labor intensive, so we do them once every 2 weeks. But there is a sequence in which, you know, you deploy infrastructure and then you deploy applications on top of the infrastructure at 2 week intervals. But we're not following SAFE in a formal fashion, and yet it still seems to work pretty well.
Yeah. Yes, and exactly that. You know, so you need to, for each context, as you know, Amo, better than I do, depending on the context, depending on your, if you like, the fancy name for it, the DevOps tooling that you have, or how good your DevOps pipeline is, and also depending on the solution, because if you're building cyber physical systems, you know, you've got hardware, firmware, and software, not all the components could be released at the same rate, and your DevOps pipeline needs to take care of that. You know, you may have a different pipeline for your firmware, your hardware, than you have for your software that is, you know, front end user accessible, and your release frequency would be different as well. So yeah, we have all of that. One other thing I want to show you, and I will show you other things as well, but I will show you the overview tab because this is useful for people to know. One lens that you could, or another way that you can view SAFE as, is as a set of 7 competencies that are required to achieve business agility. What you see on this view is, first of all, that customer centricity is front and center, so it's right at the center. So everything we do needs to embed customer centricity. So in SAFE, we say customer centricity is a mindset. Okay, so we got customer centricity, and then you look at it, and everything starts with lean agile leadership. So you need to have lean and agile leadership. That's the foundation competency. Without that, you're not going to go far. And again, we got what does that mean? It means your leaders need to have the mindset and principles, so they need to understand what the Agile manifesto values, Agile manifesto for software development, let's be more specific, values are, and Agile manifesto for software development, the 12 principles of it are. They also need to understand what the SAFe 4 core values are and what the SAFe 10 principles are, and make sure that their actions and behaviors are aligned with that. Now, that's a big ask. So when leadership starts, one of the first things they do, they also go through a learning and training, and they understand that this is new for them. So it takes a bit of humility to say, hey, I don't know this way of working. I am going to learn new stuff. And then the other thing to do, depending on the kind of leader you are, once you accept that, then you could sort of, so if it's me, if you like, I'll come up with a contract with my direct reports or the team that I'm working with to say, hey, I'm going to behave in this new ways. It's new for me. Of course, my tendency is to fall back to the way I've done it before. If I do that, or when I do that, call me out on it so I can learn, because I need that feedback. You know, you're not going to be able to flick a switch and say, yeah, I'm going to do things differently straight away. And once you have that mindset and principles, then you can start to lead by example, because your actions and behaviors need to be aligned with that. Then we got the leading the change, which is what you do as well as leaders. And again, remember, leadership is at all levels. It's not just your CEO or CIO. It's at all levels. Then we come to the core building block in SAFe, which is the agile teams. Without agile teams, we don't have anything. So we need to have agile teams, teams of agile teams, and built-in quality. So built-in quality is the foundation. So there's a quote from Dean Leffingwell, which is, you cannot scale crappy code or hardware or anything else for that matter. So unless you build the quality in, then it's pointless. You cannot inspect for quality afterwards. The quality needs to be built in. We can verify it, but it's got to be built in. And that's why we, practices, as you know, in software development, test-driven development, behavior-driven development, those are good ways to build quality in, and the definition of done. And then agile product delivery. So agile product delivery is the other competency that we have in SAFe. And the purpose of that is that we can deliver products that our customers desire. They are feasible, we can build them. Technically, we can build them, and they're viable. We can make money out of it, and they're sustainable, right? And in order to do that, we need to have customer centricity, meaning that we have that customer centricity, which is a mindset, and we use design thinking as a set of tools and techniques to allow us to understand our customers. What do our customers need? How do we empathize with our customers? How do we walk in the customer's shoes? That's what we do in order to achieve that. And then development on cadence and release on demand. So we looked at this, and we sort of looked at it before. So we have 2 weekly iterations, and all teams are synchronized. So we develop on cadence. Why do we do that? It allows us to turn unpredictable events into predictable events, if you like. That's what cadence does. That doesn't mean that we can know when an initiative is going to be done, but we know that every 2 weeks, that's the iteration is going to end. We know every 2 weeks we're going to learn. We know, and the teams will learn, how much work we can realistically finish in 2 weeks. So we quickly learn from that. We can, so all of those things, and we know that if I want to put new work in, I have the opportunity in 2 weeks' time, if it's just started, or a week, or whatever we are in that cycle of 2 weeks. So that's why we need those things. And of course, DevOps and release on demand, which is what we need. The DevOps pipeline is a key thing that we build. Now, enterprise solution delivery is a competency. Some organizations will be working on a solution that needs a number of agile release trains and suppliers to coordinate their work. to build the solution. Then you need the enterprise solution delivery. There is a tendency that an organization is big because they're big to say we need to have a large solution. We need to have multiple agile release trains and suppliers to coordinate their effort. This, if you like, this configuration comes with a health warning. When you have a number of agile release trains that you need to coordinate and suppliers, coordination means you have dependencies. Dependencies means you have risks. It means you're adding delays. So use it if you absolutely need this configuration, but don't just go for it as default. Oh, we are big, therefore we need a large solution. Think about it. If it applies to your context, absolutely go for it. But don't just jump in there because you're a big organization. And the things then that we need to have lean systems and software system engineering practice, solution engineering, sorry, practices over here. And what we're doing in here is we're capturing the solution intent. Solution intent in SAFe is a single repository that captures the requirements, the tests, any prototypes, any designs that we've got. So does it mean that it's got to be a single thing? No, but at least, if you like, you can think of it as an index that you can refer to wherever you got those artifacts, you can get to it in one place. The other thing that you can see on this icon is the fact that we acknowledge the fact that when we first start, we want to fix as little as possible. And then as we grow and we learn, things get more and more fixed and the options, if you like, reduce. That also depends on your context, how much of it you can fix up front and how much of it is flexible, but that's what we do. And then we also need to have the ability to coordinate a number of agile release trains and suppliers together. So that's what we do over there. And we need to be able to continually evolve live systems. So it could be the ability like over-the-air deployment or things like that. So that's what we're doing there. What's the other competency? Lean portfolio management. So lean portfolio management is about aligning strategy with execution. Now, portfolio in SAFe has got a special meaning. So typically portfolio for most people is a collection of projects and programs. But in SAFe, a portfolio consists of a number of development value streams. So what are development value streams? So development value streams are group of people. So organizations have got an operational value stream. Operational value stream is how the customer interacts with you and how you get your money. So think of a simple system, a post office. I go to the post office, I got a parcel, I give it to the counter, they weigh it, I have to declare what sort of content it is, then I have to pay the amount of postage, whatever it is, and it goes. So that the operational value stream, fairly straightforward. Go in there, weigh it, write the label, pay, off it goes. But now there are systems at the back end that enable this operational value stream. It gets stamped, it gets routed, it goes to different depots, then it goes on different vans. So that operational value stream is enabled by a number of IT systems, if you like. And those IT systems are managed through one or more development value streams. And that's what we're talking about. That's what a development value stream is. So meaning that a group of people that are organized and aligned to defining, developing, deploying, and running a solution or system, which is in SAFe is a solution. So a lean portfolio management in SAFe consists of a number of value streams, development value streams. Why is that important? Because in SAFe we fund value streams. We're not funding initiatives. We don't fund projects. We fund value streams. And agile release trains, which is a team of agile teams, sit within a value stream. So that takes a lot of the problems that we have away, because typically when you run a project, you need to resource a project, get a number of people together, you form people around the work. Whereas in this way, we got agile release trains, which are mostly stable and long-lived team of agile teams, and our job is just to make sure that the most valuable work is flowing through them. So that's what we do. That's the difference between traditional ways of working and working in safe environment. And agile operations, agile portfolio operations is all about, okay, so we got our value streams, we have some sort of KPIs, we have some measures that we want the value stream to do. The operations is looking after and say, okay, are we doing that? And occasionally we also have cross value stream benefits that we can have from solutions going across value streams. So we also take care of that in there. And lean governance, as the name suggests, is about having lightweight governance. Make sure we got our compliance. Again, the objective there is to try and build it into the work rather than inspect for governance later on. So now we need to also have organizational agility, because to get business agility, you also need organizational agility. You need to have lean thinking people and agile teams, not just in your technology part, in every part. You need to look at lean business operations, meaning we need to visualize the flow, we need to look at the delays, we need to tackle the sources of delays. And we need to have strategy agility. So we cannot have an agile organization or business agility if our strategy is going to stay static for a number of years. So we need to do that. Continuous learning culture, meaning that you cannot stand still. There is always a better way, and you will always need to find what that better way is. So you need to learn, you need to provide innovation culture, and there is relentless improvement to keep learning. And what you do in there is you look at system-wide issues, you find the root causes of them, and you find improvements, ways of removing those sources of delay. Any questions on the competencies that are required? According to SAFE, these are the 7 competencies that you need as an organization in order to achieve business agility. Probably all clear. Now, one of the key things that is built into SAFE is the innovation and planning iteration. So every program increment or every PI, which could be 10 weeks, let's say. So every 10 weeks, the last 2 weeks of that 2 weeks are dedicated for innovation and planning, meaning that we do whatever it is for innovation. It could be hackathons, it could be learning new tools, new techniques, paying off some technical debt. I mean, first of all, we make sure that our ways of working don't add any technical debt. But if there are any, you could do it there. It could be that you're doing some exploration, coming up with some possible solutions for some new initiative that is coming up. It's all happening in there. And then towards the end of the second week is the planning. So all the teams get together and plan together. Without this dedicated time and space for people to innovate and plan together, you're going to get the tyranny of urgent, and you're going to get, if you like, people burnt out, code quality suffers. All of these things are built into the framework to make sure every 2 weeks you got that. There is also, when you first start, you might have been too ambitious to how much you can achieve in these 4 weeks. So there's a little bit of buffer that goes in here, but that's the same as what you learn in the iterations, is the same in here. Soon you will learn how much you can actually do in these iterations, and you're going to take as much work as possible in here, not to eat in here. Any questions on innovation and planning iteration? Okay, let me show you another unique. So I think this is fairly unique in SAFE. The other one is inspect and adapt workshop. So inspect and adapt, yes, with all iterative and incremental ways of working, we have an inspection and adaptation. So we got our retrospective, which is, let's find better ways of working. So what typically sometimes happens is that those retrospectives, we talk about things to do, we talk about improvements, we may even list them. Not many improvements get carried out. And we get improvements that go beyond the team. They are the system-wide impediments. And we kind of say, oh, okay, yeah, that's somebody else, or we raise it with someone. It doesn't get done. So the inspect and adapt workshop that is built into SAFE, you still have your retrospectives, you still do all of that. The inspect and adapt workshop in SAFE is now looking at system-wide issues that impact a number of teams. And we do root cause analysis. We do the fishbone and the 5 whys. I mean, that's a technique that is proposed, but you can use any formal root cause analysis method to come up with the root causes of the issue, and then write your improvement actions items that will be taken into PI planning and implemented. So PI planning, so we're going to give ourselves something like 8 weeks and a number of teams that are going to work on removing this impediment that is affecting many teams. This is fairly unique as well, I think. Any questions?
Yeah, David Mazel was just asking here, how would an external system-wide Linux fix be processed RCA-wise? Dave, would you like to elaborate? What does RCA mean?
Root cause analysis, I think.
Okay, right. Thank you.
So external Linux, so you mean a Linux provider has got a problem. How can we fix it here?
Zero-day vulnerability that has to be patched.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure whether I fully understand it. So if it is a operating system that we are using, in other words, we are not the developers of the Linux system. If the patch is available, we then just apply it. But if you're saying we have to come up with a patch, then that's a little bit harder question to answer. I mean, of course, if we got the ability to do it, we do it, but not many teams would have the ability to go and patch the operating system. Even if they had the ability, they probably won't have the access to the code, or they will be infringing the your rights, licensing rights.
Yeah, I think Dave is proposing a worse scenario than that, which is that your systems have actually been compromised.
Oh, okay. All right. So the system has been compromised. Well, we just if the system has been compromised and there is no solution for it, the patch isn't out there yet, you mean? We will then work with a Linux supplier to try and get it done.
Yeah, the problem is that you've got a project support infrastructure, and it's effectively been hosed by having some vulnerability exposed. And although there's a patch available, you still have to recover the actual working platform back to a situation where people can use it safely.
So I'm still not quite sure what the issue is. So there is a patch, but we need to apply it to the older solution that we built, or what is the issue? Sorry, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting the problem. Do you get it, Imo?
Not entirely. I mean, Dave, you're a security consultant. Why don't you actually speak and
Yeah, that's right. Tell us what it is, and tell us the solution. If you're the expert in that field, you can also tell us how you propose that we deal with it.
You're on, mate. There seems to be some problem with your audio. We can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, we definitely can't. I can't hear you. You can't hear him, so.
Can we, while Dave sorts that out, can we go on to another question? Rodolfo Mendez has asked, how do you manage a shortage of skills or staff with specific knowledge in SAFE?
Well, so let me answer that question. It may sound a little bit flippantly, but SAFE is not a silver bullet, okay? Nothing is. So if you got a shortage of staff, then you got a shortage of staff. But let me now add a little bit more color to that. One of the things that we have in SAFE is that agile release train. In the agile release train, there are some, let's call them shared service people. For example, the architect is one of them. UX, potentially you could have UX as that. Now, why do I say potentially? If the solution that you're building has got a little bit of UX, you can get away with 1 or 2 people serving the whole agile release train. If every team is very heavy UX driven work, then you probably need embedded UX people. That's the thing that we say, every team needs to be cross-functional. Okay, so we need to have that. So we cannot fix the fact that if every team, I don't know this, let's say who do I need to pick? Let's say every team needs to have a security expert to work with them, and we've got 10 teams and we only got 1 security expert. We cannot magic that away. So somehow you got to solve that problem. Yes, you can timeshare that person. That's not good. That's not ideal. We know that that leads to lots of problems. So those kind of issues, what will happen is that you will see they will show up as your throughputs won't be as good as you want. If you got a particular team with those skills, you will see when you do your program board, which is part of the PI planning, one of the things that you do is you visualize the features and the key dependencies. If you see lots of key dependencies going to the same team over and over again, that's a signal that you need to act on. And you act on it in, are we organized ourselves in the right way? Yes, we are. We just need more of these skills. Then you need to, as an organization, you need to start investing into increasing those skills. So we have those, if you like, there are a few ways that we have. One is those shared service teams that service the whole agile release train. And one of those is also a systems team. So you can see here, we have a systems team as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. Does that answer your question, by the way, before I go and talk more?
Yeah, that does, Nader. Thanks.
Okay. So one of the other things that we have is the systems team. So we acknowledge the fact that when you first start, when the agile release train is first formed, or when you're early on your agility journey, the teams may not have, let's say, they may not have the DevOps pipeline knowledge in the teams. So the systems team will help the team gain that knowledge. The teams may not have the ability to deploy to the staging environment, for example. Again, the system team will help that. The environment that the teams are using may have fake or mocked out interfaces, and the system team environment that they use has got the end-to-end integration. So they will help with that end-to-end integration, get the teams to use those things. So that's what the system team is also about. The way I would coach organizations is that view the system team as stabilizers when you're learning how to ride a bike. You know what I mean by stabilizer, the 2 wheels that you put on there to stop you from falling over. And over time, you want to remove them. You don't want to have that dependency that you are relying on another team. But when you first start, that may be just too big a jump to say we can do everything ourselves.
We're coming gradually towards the end of our available time. Perhaps you'd like to kind of round off, and I'd be very interested in hearing your personal story as to what convinced you that this is the right way to run large enterprise projects.
Mm-hmm. Yep, let me do that. So I was a skeptic, and it was a colleague of mine who said, "Oh, I'm going to a SAFE program consultants training course. You should come." I said, "No, I don't. I've been putting this off because, you know, I've been in the agile community, XDC, and everything else, and I thought, you know, SAFE gets a very bad or has bad reputation. People say, oh, it's bad, it's not good, it's anti-agile, and the rest of it." So I invested time. I went to that training, I learned, and then started to learn more and more about it, and also work with organizations, big organizations. So I worked with some of the big banks. I worked with the banks that don't declare that they are using SAFE, but they are doing everything that is in SAFE. I worked in the banks that they're trying to roll their own, and they're creating everything. So I can see groups of people going on the SAFE website, trying to sort of see what that is, and then reformat it or say it in a different way. So what I would say is that from what I've observed in any organization of any size, any successful organization of any size, everything that SAFE has in it is required by them. So you have two choices. You know, you either try and sort of remake it, or you use something out there that has been proven many, many times over by thousands, tens of thousands of implementations. I've also helped banks in UK to adopt this and improve the way they're working. So I can see the benefits of it. So I can see it for myself. And these are teams that were already doing some level of agile. You know, yes, you could say, well, yeah, they were not quite doing Scrum, or they were not doing quite XP. I will take that, correct. They weren't perfect in any of those. But all I'm saying is, when we put the SAFE lens on top of it, productivity improved, time to market reduced. So I've seen the evidence that, and also it forces and surfaces the problems that we then need to address. One of the key things that SAFE does, and perhaps I should go here. One of the key things that SAFE does is, do you see this implementation roadmap? Do you see that?
Yes.
So
yeah,
what we do in here, we get the executives to go through the leading SAFE. In other words, it's not just about getting the, oh, we need training, but it's also making sure that the executives understand this new way of working needs new way of thinking, managing, and understanding uncertainty. As opposed to, yes, it's a change, you guys need to do it, I don't need to change anything. So that also helps a lot by sort of saying, okay, everybody, the leadership understands. Now we got the agile release train, we train the leadership of the agile release train as well, and then everybody is on board and understands this new ways of working. So I've seen it work in my own, you know, engagements. The benefits are there. So as a skeptic, I went in very skeptical, but I've seen it work, and it sort of helps a lot. And I still work with some clients where they're trying to do pretty much everything that is in here, but call it a different way, or try and roll it, grind up themselves. And it just, you know, yes, you can do it yourself, but you know, you're investing a lot of time and money for where you can just go in here. The other thing that is great about SAFE, if you guys don't know it, I'm pretty sure everybody knows it, everything on the Scaled Agile website is clickable. So if you want to know what a Lean Agile Center of Excellence is, you just click and the article is there. It tells you what it is. Then that you get a bit more detail. Then it tells you about the size of the team. It then goes and tells you about different configurations that you could have. You know, you could have, if you're small, you could get away with a central one, decentralized one, but then you have a problem that nobody talks to each other, and, you know, hub and spoke model, you know, so it's there, the knowledge is there, is shared, is not reserved for anyone. So everything is shared, and you can go and read more if you want. So I think that's why I find it very, very useful. And the framework is continually evolving. based on, so we got theory, you got bodies of knowledge that go into the framework, and then the practice. By practice, we learn. We get feedback from implementations, from partners, and that's why my journey has been a useful and fruitful one. Any other questions?
Well, I think that just wraps it up then. Thank you very much, Nader. That's been a really insightful 90 minutes for me.
Thank you, Imo, and thank you for all the team, Sohail and others. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure. And if you need anything else, anybody, just reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to respond with any detailed questions that you may have. You can reach me via BCS or direct.
Great, thank you very much. I was going to, at this point, express our appreciation of your work by awarding you one of the BCS books. But you told me before the meeting that you've got too many books to read already on your pile, and I can certainly sympathise with that.
That's right. I need to focus on reading them rather than buying them or getting them. Yes.
Right. This recording will be available on the BCS SPA website before very long. And also there'll be a link to the sign-up sheet for the June meeting. And don't forget the conference, spaconference.org. Thanks everyone.
So we got the next meeting is in June. We got the sign up for that SPA conference, and I think you said the call for papers is extended till 17th. So
that's
get your papers in.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you, Emma. Take care. Have a good evening, everyone.